For more on this, we're joined by Mark Humphrey-Jenner, who's Associate Professor of Finance at the University of New South Wales Business School. Now, Mark, markets initially welcomed Friday's court ruling, but mounting uncertainty over Trump's next steps seem to have overshadowed any potential benefits from lower tariff rates and possible reimbursements. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, firstly, thanks for having me. And you're absolutely right. So the Supreme Court struck out the tariffs, and there was some initial relief at this, perhaps optimism that tariffs would now disappear, thereby improving the earnings of a lot of companies in the US. However, President Trump, very soon after that, came out with the proposal for a 10% tariff across the board. And then after that, he raised it to a 15% tariff across the board. Notably, that 15% tariff is higher than the tariff rate on some countries already, which had been knocked down to 10%. So this does create quite a bit of uncertainty about whether some countries are now going to face higher tariff rates and about what they will do. There's also the issue that the tariffs are now not really being used as much for a tool to perhaps generate more trade benefits for the United States, rather just blanket across the board, meaning there's less room and less incentive for countries to negotiate, thereby meaning that the tariffs are less of an effective tool than they might otherwise be. Now, at the moment, we don't know the exact form of the nature of the tariffs that will come through. That is, the regulations approving these are still a little bit inchoate, but at least that's what President Trump's signaling at the moment. And this has created quite a bit of volatility in the markets.
And some trading partners are delaying finalizing their trade agreements with the US. How much of a disruption could that cause?
Well, certainly it's a relatively large disruption because the trade agreements that are already in existence, while some countries might be a little bit concerned, they might have given away too much relative to what they really needed to give away, especially given that the tariffs are now just blanket across the board. So they might be thinking, was there really any need or benefit to entering into these agreements, which is going to create enforceability issues down the track. And the second issue is that if a country is thinking about entering into the agreements, they're going to be thinking, is it really worth giving away anything when they're going to be hit with this blanket tariff anyway? So what this effectively means is that many of these trade agreements are going to be slightly slow-walked by countries that aren't sure whether or not they need to enter into them.
Right, and what about those reimbursements that some partners had been betting on?
Well, the reimbursements look like they might be a little bit of a mess. After all, it's not clear how those reimbursements are going to be operationalized. If the tariffs were already illegal from the beginning, then the tariffs shouldn't have been brought in, meaning that many companies should be entitled to a reimbursement. But at the moment, we don't see the exact mechanism through which that's going to occur and whether individual companies are going to need to litigate individually, which means that for some people, it might simply not be worthwhile litigating. So say, for example, I as an individual were to send something to the United States and be hit with a tariff. Well, it isn't really worthwhile for me to litigate this because the money I'll spend on lawyers' fees are more than the couple of hundred I might get back from the tariffs. Whereas for large companies, they might be more inclined to litigate. We could also see the formation of class actions potentially, although that does appear like it's going to be a relatively time-consuming, potentially somewhat chaotic process.
Right, we'll have to wait and see what Trump does next. Mark Humphrey-Jenner in Sydney, thank you as always.